Welcome everyone to the 2024 IHI Patient Safety Congress. My name is Kedar. I'm the President and CEO of the Institute for Healthcare Improvement, and I had hoped to deliver these remarks to you during the opening keynote, but because of some flight delays and cancellations, I wasn't able to be on the stage. I'm really grateful to the staff of IHI, the blue shirts that you've seen in the corridors, to Sarah Valentin and Peter Chung and so many others who have made it possible for me to deliver what I was going to say to all of you yesterday in this way through the video. So please allow me to share with you a little bit of what I had hoped to share with you yesterday in this manner. The first thing I wanted to say was thank you to all of you. Thank you to our exhibitors, our sponsors, our colleagues that have put this whole Congress on, to the IHI staff and the blue shirts for helping to make the magic happen of our time together here in Orlando. But most of all, thank you to all of you, the participants in this meeting who have given us the gift of your time. We're honored to have you here, and we look forward to our conversations together, learning with one another, sharing with one another innovations in patient safety that can help our health systems grow much more stronger and much more resilient. I wanted to start our conversation off with a personal story about someone that I care deeply about. A few years ago, my wife's mother, our children's nanny, or her grandmother, as we call them, as they call her, started having a nasty cough. She didn't have a fever, so like most people would do, we chalked it up to a virus and essentially ignored it. But a few weeks later, the cough was still there, and Nani started to get short of breath. Nani is chronically anemic, so we got a blood count, and her red cells were about where they usually are, so that couldn't be the explanation. And again, we waited, this time for a few months, to see if things would get better, but they didn't. We got a chest x-ray about 3 months after all this began, and it showed a diffuse granulomatous disease, but no one called us with the report until we hunted it down ourselves. We dogged her doctors. We tried multiple rounds of steroids and antibiotics, but unfortunately nothing worked. Nani didn't fit the mold of a pneumonia or even a tuberculosis or a heart failure or even a cancer that could be easily diagnosed and potentially readily treated. Finally, since nothing seemed to be working, a CT was ordered and it confirmed granulomatous disease. And a biopsy was then taken of the affected lung, which confirmed or finally made a diagnosis of sarcoidosis. Sarcoid is notoriously difficult to diagnose, but the whole diagnostic journey for our family and for Nani took almost 2 years. Our children's grandmother, Nani, started on methotrexate, which she tolerated okay. And while it stalled the progression of her disease radiographically, it didn't actually change her symptoms all that much. Her clinical feeling was pretty much the same. Still, she remained on this medication, on methotrexate, for months and months, hoping for improvements, but it didn't really happen. Her lungs were already too scarred and too fibrotic from the sarcoid. We were sure that something wasn't quite right as a family, but her clinicians seemed to think this was typical and that things would just improve with time. That's what we were told over and over again. And then I remember one spring day, she began to bruise easily. She started noticing on her skin black and blue marks. A routine blood count showed that all of her cell lines, her platelets, her white cells, her red cells, were all down. Her doctors stopped her methotrexate, but her counts didn't recover. A bone marrow biopsy revealed abnormal cells in the bone marrow with a high circulating blast count, a new diagnosis, this one harder to pronounce and with an even more dire prognosis, myelodysplastic syndrome with circulating blasts. It's hard to know what caused Nani's myelodysplasia. Chemo and radiation are known causes, and methotrexate, while not the most common cause, is a rare contributor. And at her age, survival past 16 to 18 months was uncommon. So we readied ourselves as a family for that possibility. Nani was started on a different set of chemotherapeutic agents to try and help her, and a search began for a bone marrow donor that could, in theory, save her life. We learned a lot about the US bone marrow program last year as a family. We learned about the inequities of representation in the marrow banks here in this country. White folks are reasonably well represented in the registry, but Black folks, Hispanic folks, Native Americans, and Asians are not. But overall, not enough people in general are in the registry overall. Our family ran bone marrow drives at the local temple, and our younger cousins, who you'll see a picture of in the slides, I hope, collected sputum samples on their college campuses. Many family members contributed and friends contributed, and at least one of our cousins actually did match with someone that wasn't Nani to help save their life. Nani met other patients during this time, patients like her in their 70s who had gone through a bone marrow transplant and survived it. And she readied herself, and after 6 months of waiting, we got a call that the marrow registry had found someone who might be a match. And so at 73 years of age, our Nani prepared herself for a transplant just over a year ago. As I was preparing this talk together for the Patient Safety Congress, I was reflecting on both this experience with our grandmother, and I was reflecting also on recent articles published by David Bates and Liz Mort at Harvard, the Office of the Inspector General here in the US, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid, by Patients for Patient Safety, and by so many others. These articles and their accompanying editorials and commentaries often tell a rather bleak story about where we are with patient safety. Post-pandemic, but even before the pandemic, these articles describe prevailing unsafe conditions in care. They cite statistics to show how safety has gotten worse, how we haven't made much progress, how our investments in safety have yet to bear the fruit that they once promised. They aren't wrong. I accept that there is much work still to be done, that we are still not safe, that safety has lost some of its shine, that any unsafe care, when you or someone you love is in the bed, is too much unsafe care. All of that is true, right, and real. I heard somewhere once that as a parent, you're only as happy as your least happy child. A corollary that I've added is that you're only as well as your least well family member. For my family, that person is our Nani, the much beloved matriarch of our family. And there was a lot that didn't go right with her care. Long delays in diagnosis, as I shared, missed communications, missed opportunities, a toxic medication that was probably continued past the point of its usefulness, a side effect that may prove life-threatening to her. But for all of those issues and the failures and the challenges that we experienced, there have been incredible and very special moments as well. A coherent patient support community that she found who could share her journey, an attentive, professional, and dare I say, loving physician. No central line infections, in fact. In fact, no hospitalizations of any kind. Multi-institutional care coordination like I've never seen before. And the very fact that a 73-year-old woman with myelodysplasia with pulmonary compromise could be considered for a bone marrow transplant just simply would not have been possible without today's improvements in technology and your work on patient safety. It is true that our safety agenda has been too constrained, over-medicalized, too focused on the hospital, and it has rarely utilized the full arsenal of information assets and technologies that we now have available to us. That is true. We have not focused enough on diagnostic considerations, and we have not invited our patients to co-produce the safe care that they are so deeply and personally invested in. For too long, we have looked in the rearview mirror, studying the recent and remote past to try to ensure our present and future is safer and better. But I believe today's safety agenda is very different. Today, we look beyond the hospital to how we can make care safe in the clinic, in the nursing home, in the workplace, in the school. Today's safety agenda is focused on diagnosis as much as it is on the consequences of the therapeutic maneuvers that we now conduct. We invite the patient and caregivers to co-produce a safer system, not by accident, but by design. We consider inequities in care as core safety concerns. And our safety systems are enabled more and more and more by technologies, including the latest in artificial intelligence and machine learning. And it is because of those advances and these improvements that in healthcare we can do and take greater and greater risks and deploy ever more complex treatments to help our people heal. It is not despite our patient safety efforts, it is because of our patient safety efforts that a 73-year-old grandmother with myelodysplasia could be offered a bone marrow transplant, a procedure that just 15 years ago would not have been offered to someone over the age of 45. Safety today is different than safety yesterday, and that is exactly what we will consider here at the Congress together in these days. We will be looking at the impacts of artificial intelligence and particularly how generative AI is affecting patient safety in both positive and potentially harmful ways. Just in a few hours here on the keynote stage, Kaveh Shahjania, Beth Daly Olam, and Nassim Afsar will share the findings of a new report released by IHI's Lucian Leap Institute that outlines the many benefits to patient safety of generative AI, but also some of the risks and what we can do to mitigate those risks. The report explores 3 key use cases of AI in clinical care and makes recommendations of how we might work together to mitigate the anticipated safety risks that AI will pose. I don't want to steal their thunder. They're coming up just in a little bit, but please don't miss this important presentation and importantly, the paper that they will launch together. And even as we launch this really important seminal report, IHI's research team is already at work on the next investigation around how technology can enable greater safety, trying to understand how quality and safety leaders today, like yourselves, are deploying AI in your clinical environments and how we can learn and best harness this game-changing technology. This is one where we'd like your help, and there's a QR link on the slide that we'll share with you to a survey that will help guide our research team towards the kinds of use cases and applications of AI that you're anticipating might help patient safety in the future. We will also be talking a lot at this Congress and in all future meetings about the importance of diagnostic safety. For much too long, our emphasis has been on the consequences of the things that we do in healthcare, and we have ignored, to our detriment, the things that we forget to do. By many accounts, while not every one of us will experience a therapeutic error, almost every one of us will suffer a diagnostic error at some point during our lifetimes. It's hard to know what would have happened if we had picked up Nani sarcoid earlier. Perhaps steroids would have worked for her before scarring her lungs. Diagnosis is the essence of clinical life, and as our systems get more and more complex, and there are more and more handoffs, the risk of errors in diagnosis looms ever greater and ever larger. Addressing this important set of questions will be critical to making safe care in the future. We will spend time in this Congress and in all future IHI meetings addressing the risk to safety of inequity. At IHI, we have been very clear about where equity fits into the quality agenda. We've said there is no quality without equity. We haven't been quite as clear and quite as explicit about patient safety, but let's set the record straight today. There's neither quality nor safety without equity. Unsafe care for some means that our systems are fundamentally unsafe and not reliable for all. An unsafe plane is an unsafe plane. An unsafe operating room is an unsafe operating room for everyone. And this brings us to perhaps our next important point. Our work on patient safety has been marked by an important period of recognition and understanding. We have come to grips over the last several decades with how prevalent and widespread our safety challenges are in healthcare. This surprised us at first. Remember the newsreels of 98,000 lives being lost to errors after the 2 Errors Human report. But today I fear that we've become, and the public more broadly have become, quite numb to these escalating numbers of lives lost to patient safety. We can no longer startle our systems into action, and we cannot admonish our hardworking, committed staff to overcome the odds. They have and will continue to overcome unsafe systems for a period with heroic human effort, but they cannot do this forever. Eventually, our disordered and disorganized systems will catch up. Today, our safety work is at a very real inflection point, a separation from the way it was and a shift towards what it will become. We are moving from safety from reactive to proactive, from retrospective to prospective, from delayed to real time, from error avoidance to changing our default systems and settings to getting it right the first time, from technology as an afterthought to technology designed in, from safety on the side, fundamentally, to safety in our everyday operations. These shifts have been heralded before. People have talked about this before. But now we have real examples of how health systems are practicing these principles and building the future of safety into their core clinical operations. Places like Carilion Clinic, Prisma Health, and Jefferson Health, among others, have taken steps to build what we believe at IHI are true clinical care operating systems. These systems consistently knit information technology and improvement initiatives together in a practical, seamless, technology-enabled management system that improves care for patients and makes safety a reliable system property. We are so convinced at IHI that this is the future that we've invested here in understanding these approaches. And I want to introduce you here to Josh Clark, our newest Vice President of Quality and Safety Operating Systems. Please join Josh in learning about the care operating systems that we are trying to prospectively build as an organization, to hear about what it means to go from unintended, cobbled together designs in our health system to the kind of intentional design that is at the heart of driving systematic improvements in patient safety. And lastly, just as we need more systematic and embedded ways of achieving safety within our organizations and our systems, so too do we need a national strategy for how to create conditions that make our nation's health system safer. IHI has been proud to partner with 27 national organizations to draft the National Action Plan to Advance Patient Safety. As part of this effort, we identified 4 foundational areas to create the kind of national system that will make our healthcare safer. Over the next 6 months, IHI will introduce a National Action Plan recognition program, which we call Safer Together. This program will enable us to acknowledge, celebrate, and recognize health systems that have made commitments to creating conditions, structures, processes, and culture that are vital to support highly reliable and safer care. And we will support organizations to achieve this recognition with learning networks that prepare us all for the safety challenges that lie ahead. We have a lot of work to do to make our health system safer and to ensure that the benefits of therapeutic and diagnostic discovery reach every single patient safely and reliably. This work will never be easy, but together we've put safety into the national consciousness before, and we will do it again. And together we've made care safer, and we will do that again and again and again. So on my behalf, and on behalf of my children and our Nani, we are forever grateful to every one of you for the work that you do to make care safer today than it has ever been. Thank you, and enjoy the Congress.